Story Nori Extra with Jeremy Strong. Hello, this is Natasha, and I've come to Reigate Priory Junior School in the southeast of England to meet the best-selling children's author Jeremy Strong and 600 of his young readers.
You go. This side.
Jeremy has written 28 books, and all of them are extremely funny and perhaps just a bit silly. They have titles like My Brother's Famous Bottom and Fat Bag the Demon Vacuum Cleaner. But his most famous is almost certainly a ripping tale called The 100-Mile-an-Hour Dog. I've been asking some of the children here at Reigate Priory Junior School what they made of him. Was Jeremy Strong how you imagined him to be?
Well, yeah, kind of. He was a very funny character.
Now I know why they call him Laugh Your Socks Off of Jeremy Strong.
He was really animated and engaging for an author, wasn't he?
Yeah, very engaging.
What was your favourite bit, tell me, of the whole event?
He tried to break the record and how fast he could read the whole of 100-Mile-an-Hour Dog in 1 minute, and he did it.
5,
4, 3, 2, 1, stop!
Streaker! It's the world's fastest dog, but she doesn't know her name and she doesn't know what stop and stay means either. Mum tells Trevor she'll pay him £30 if he wants Streaker! Every day he goes to holiday, but Streaker! Running off, Trevor decides he might as well get a free ride from the dog, so he puts on his skates and he holds on to the dog's legs and says, Streaker! Goes racing off to the market. She crashes into every single stall and Trevor almost gets into it.
The funniest thing about Jeremy Strong is the way he uses his arms to describe how he writes the stories.
The funniest thing I read in Jeremy Strong is when everyone thinks that he's still that old woman's handbag. The funniest part is when the bully Charlie, he loses the bet and he has to climb into the horse trough with all the seaweed and gunk in it. So that's really funny.
Then the bully comes along, nasty Charlie, smile! And he's got 3 enormous Alsatians. Charlie has a bet with Trevor and his girlfriend. Charlie bets them that they can't train Streaker to walk quietly, but if they fail, they'll have to climb into a horse trough full of frog spawn and weed and guns.
He told you about all his writing and what inspired him to write Streaker.
So he draws from real life from his stories.
Yeah. His friends had these 2 dogs and they were really, really fast, and one day he was out in a cornfield, I think, and then the 2 dogs ran off in different directions and that inspired him to do his Streaker.
Trevor and his girlfriend tried to train Streaker, but she's just hopeless. In the end, they built a dog walking machine from Mum's exercise bag and some old carpet. Trevor says walk is to put Streaker on the machine, and oh dear, she gets flung off backwards and gets her bum jammed in the washing machine. The fire brigade have to come and rescue Streaker. But a miracle, Streaker is so scared of the dog walking machine she comes and stands beside Trevor whenever he cries walk. It's Charlie.
The funniest thing in Jeremy Strong books that I've read is when Granny marries a Hell's Angel. He's written a book called Beware Killer Tomatoes, and you don't get killer tomatoes. It's just a bit weird.
It's fuming. Trevor and his girlfriend are saved and they don't have to get in the bath. The end! Oh, well done. We had 3 seconds left. We did that with 57 seconds. Give yourself...
Well, I'm very pleased to have a few minutes to chat with Jeremy Strong himself. Hi, Jeremy. It's very nice to have you on Story Nori.
I'm very pleased to be here, thank you.
As we've just been hearing in this school, you have a great gift of making children laugh. Does your sense of humour go right back to your very own childhood?
It certainly does, yes. I think it's stuck at about the age of 10. And it's always been very kind of visual humour, based around the comics I read as a child, I think.
Most of your stories are told in the first person, usually by a young boy. How do you capture that child's eye view of the world?
I can remember my own childhood pretty clearly, and in particular I remember how I was always trying to avoid adults and sidestep adults, because I always seemed to be in trouble with them, and I think that's really what I try to capture more than anything else. I don't have too many adults in the stories. I try to concentrate on the children themselves.
If I may, I'm just going to read a little bit from one of your books, My Granny's Great Escape. It's from the first chapter called My Granny and the Boy Next Door. I don't believe it. My granny's in love. She's at least 5,000 years old. Well, 62 really. And she's got all soppy about this man next door. He's such a handsome boy, she told me. Boy, he's older than she is. Do you know what she did next? She whispered in my left ear, "Do you think he fancies me, Nicholas?" I tried to escape, but she clung on to me. "You've gone very red, Nicholas. You're not embarrassed by your granny, are you?" Embarrassed? I wanted to crawl into a hole and hide. Come to think of it, I wanted Granny to crawl into a hole and hide. It's very funny. But do you think in real life children often find their parents and grandparents embarrassing?
Oh, of course. Yes, all the time. I was just trying to remember embarrassing things about my own parents, but nothing in particular comes to mind. But I think there are times when you just want to keep away from your parents. You don't want to be associated with them in any way whatsoever.
Some of the families in your books are terribly ordinary and also mad too. Do you know any real families like that?
Yes, I know quite a lot of families like that, really. My own family being one of them. There were 4 of us, 4 children in the family, as well as mum and dad, and also a grandmother living with us. And I think that's where the ideas for a lot of the stories come from. And there were always rather zany things going on, partly because my own parents had very good senses of humour, and that came across in everything that we did. We had lots of wordplay at the dinner table and that kind of thing. But there are also other families I've come across far more zanier than mine. The family that produced the 100-mile-an-hour dog, for example, was a particularly madcap type family, and I got a lot of inspiration from seeing what the sorts of things that they got up to.
Why were they mad?
I'm not sure whether it was having the dogs around that made them mad or they made the dogs mad themselves. But one of them was a teacher, Jane, and she was a terrific teacher, one of these very, very enthusiastic teachers. But she was always doing slightly oddball, unusual things with the children in her class, like getting them to be pirates and go around the school and kidnap children and things like that. It was great fun, enormous fun.
Okay, I'd just like to read another extract from one of your most famous books, perhaps, The 100-Mile-an-Hour Dog. The story's told by a boy called Trevor, whose challenge is to train the family dog. The dog's name's Streaker, and this is how Trevor describes her. Streaker is a mixed-up kind of dog. You can see from her thin and powerful legs that she's got a lot of greyhound blood in her, along with quite a bit of Ferrari and a large chunk of whirlwind. Nobody in our family likes walking her, and this is hardly surprising. Streaker can out-accelerate a torpedo. She can do 0 to 100 miles an hour in the blink of an eye. She's usually vanished over the far horizon long before you even have time to yell, "Streaker!" Now, if someone came up to you in the street and said, "Hey, what's the worst torture you can think of?" You might suggest boiling in oil, or having to watch golf on TV with your dad, or even the 9 times table, none of which is one of my own personal nightmares. But without a doubt, I would have to say, walking Streaker. Of course, Streaker, being a dog, doesn't have much to say for herself. Why do you think she's such a popular character?
I think it's because somehow what comes across about Streaker is that she is just very lovable. So she doesn't do anything unkind. She doesn't misbehave deliberately. It's just the way she is. And also, in a way, I think children don't just recognise the fun of the dog in the dog. They recognise perhaps a bit of themselves. The dog is a bit like an extension of their own personality. It's always getting into trouble without really meaning to get into trouble at all.
After spending all day making children laugh, do you sometimes find it hard to talk to adults?
Yes, occasionally. Mostly I just want to be quiet and on my own. When a day like today, when I've been very, very busy all day talking to children, and you just want to go and lie down in a dark place. But it come as a bit of a surprise sometimes to adults when they're talking to me and I can hear something odd and I feel an answer coming up that's something, it's an odd reply to something that they're going to say. And I either have to bite it back or say it. And if I do say it, then they look at me very strangely as if to say, how old are you? Are you 8, 9? Or why do you find that funny?
Oh, I'm sure it's just you're young at heart.
That would be nice.
Well, your latest book is a little bit more grown up in places, despite its rather amusing title, Beware, Killer Tomatoes. It's about a boy called Jack who is in hospital with a broken leg. He befriends a girl called Maisie who seems to have lost the power of speech, only she has secret conversations with Jack. I'll just read a little bit where they're discussing the male and female nurse on the ward. As we'll hear, they've given the male nurse a rather unflattering nickname. She fancies him, whispered Maisie, as if she had read my mind. How could anyone fancy Acne Man? Doesn't matter. It'll end in tears anyway. Always does. How do you mean? People never stay together, she said simply. They always split up. My parents haven't split up. I bet they will. Don't say that. What would you know anyway? They always do. None of my friends have both parents. Some have got 2 dads, and some have got 2 mums, and some have only got a dad or a mum, except Sophie, and she's got 3 dads, 1 proper and 2 stepdads. Well, my parents aren't going to split up, I said staunchly. They won't bother to ask you, snorted Maisie. Don't be so stupid. I'm not stupid. Keep your voice down. I don't want anyone to hear. Oh, right. Why not? And don't say because. Why can't anyone hear what little Miss Smarty Pants Alien has to say? Maisie scowled back. You won't tell? Cross my heart or die from a fart, okay? My dad's gone. A few months ago. One day he was there, and the next day he wasn't. Neither of them said a word. They never told me. So now I'm not going to tell them anything either. I don't speak to Mum. Haven't spoken to her for ages. The theme is a bit more serious than your usual stories. Did you make a conscious decision to add a bit of gritty realism into your humour?
No, it just came about while I was writing. The thing about these books is that quite often they do reflect situations from real life, obviously. And what I'm trying to do is communicate with real children and recognise the kinds of lives that they're actually leading. But I'm not trying to deliberately pick up on issues like separated parents and that sort of thing. But obviously those sorts of conditions affect their lives to an enormous degree. So you have to kind of reflect that in the story. So I try to sort of make the story more real by putting those things in. But at the same time, I don't want that to take over the story. I still try and keep it light and humorous and funny, partly because that's my audience expects, and it's also the way I deal with things, because humour is as relevant a way of dealing with issues as getting angry or getting upset or whatever. And I think quite often it gets overlooked.
No, definitely. I think comedy and, well, not exactly tragedy, but they're almost down the same line, aren't they?
Absolutely. Yes. They're two sides of the same coin.
In the time that you've been writing, do you think children have started to grow up sooner?
Yes, in some ways. I think that their expectations have grown up, but their emotional ability to deal with those expectations hasn't really changed all that much. They haven't matured emotionally as fast as they have in terms of what they see around them and what information is available to them and so on. So they kind of have these expectations about being able to do things much younger than they used to.
And so when do you think Streaker will return?
Streaker is coming back in the fourth story about her, which is called Lost, the 100-mile-an-hour dog, which will be out at the beginning of 2008, I'm very pleased to say. And it's a cracker of a story.
Great, we'll really look forward to it. Jeremy Strong, thank you very much indeed for talking to Story Nori.
Thank you for having me.